Well, the lawsuit says Tim Ballard was an unpaid intern who was fired by the CIA. His LinkedIn page says he was a CIA officer. His Twitter, until recently, said undercover operator, and the church called him a former CIA operative. So I asked the question to him earlier this year.
All right, guys, welcome back to the homestead. Today it's a little rainy, overcast, kind of day outside. So I thought we could recap, kind of look back on some of the stories we talked about this year. Stories that could affect your life, affect your pocketbook, or just affect maybe the direction in which you swim up this stream called life, okay? So right now we're going to reflect on the Tim Ballard OUR story. Remember Tim Ballard? He was going to save the world in child trafficking. And I also tried to explain to you guys that the United States government is complicit in this stuff. They're the largest traffickers of anybody. I tried to warn you guys, okay, that if that was the case and that's what he wanted to do, he would just get right after it right here on our own soil. But it's always over there. But I digress. So one of the stories that Tim Ballard came out with is that he was a CIA operative. And right now he's having a lawsuit filed against him claiming that he is none of the sort.
Well, the lawsuit says Tim Ballard was an unpaid intern who was fired by the CIA. His LinkedIn page says he was a CIA officer. His Twitter, until recently, said undercover operator, and the church called him a former CIA operative. So I asked the question to him earlier this year, point blank. And as you're about to see, his answer didn't exactly match any of those stories.
If someone had worked for the CIA but maybe stretched a little bit, no one's going to say anything, it's just kind of like let it go. Because there are people that do that.
Peter Warmka is a former CIA case officer who says he never met Tim Ballard, but he has questions, especially after seeing Ballard labeled in promotional material as a CIA operative.
The term operative is not really a term used within the organization.
There's no such thing as an operative. You're either a case officer or an analyst or a support staffer.
Frank Montoya was a special agent with the FBI for 26 years. Most recently, special agent in charge of the Seattle field office. So you didn't work for the CIA, but you know how the CIA works.
Absolutely. I worked very closely with them on a lot of stuff.
We showed both of them the lawsuit filed against Tim Ballard, accusing him of being an unpaid intern who failed a polygraph test and was fired. We also showed them Tim Ballard's Twitter bio, quote, CIA and DHS undercover operator. Do you take that to mean that he was undercover for the CIA?
That's my take on it, yes.
And we showed them this interview we recorded with Tim Ballard in February, long before the lawsuit was filed. What'd you do for CIA?
There's too many NDAs. Probably I shouldn't.
Is that...
It was all the cool stuff I ever did with HSI. Yeah.
Got it. Just because CIA is just such a secretive...
Yeah, but it wasn't operational stuff. It was analytical stuff. It was an analyst officer position. Not like, it wasn't like hands-on, like...
No. Within the agency, we refer to them as secrecy agreements, not NDAs.
It's fair to say that there's a difference between an undercover operator, an operative, and an analyst/officer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the story's changing.
Yeah. Analysts are important. They're hugely important. But what exactly did he do? It's always easy to say, I got to hide behind the NDA. Well, I mean, he acknowledges that the cool stuff was when he was at HSI. So, is the CIA experience even relevant other than to try to entice people into giving him money?
Another former CIA officer, who has to not be identified, says when he met Tim Ballard, Ballard downplayed his service, stating he only worked in the CIA watch office.
That was interesting, right? He went from CIA operative. You could see he was a little uptight when he was kind of pressed on the question there about his role at the CIA, but it turns out that it could be he was just a janitor pushing a broom. I was just kidding there. But he was never really in the CIA to begin with. It was just a way to name drop so he could gain credibility. It's also been rumored that the head of the church, his name happens to also be Ballard, no connection, leaked high donor information to Ballard so he could go to those people for fundraising. Because actually, in the end of the day, when you follow all this stuff, it's usually just about the money.
Tithing records. Elder M. Russell Ballard is acting president of the church's Quorum of the 12. The accusation is part of a lawsuit filed by 5 women against Operation Underground Railroad and its former CEO, Tim Ballard. Tim Ballard is not related to President Ballard. The lawsuit states that Davis County investigators found out President Ballard and other, quote, authorities leaked the tithing records to OUR to help the nonprofit target wealthy donors. Tim Ballard says the accusation is not true. The lawsuit also accuses the church of continuing to promote OUR even after publicly condemning Tim Ballard earlier this year for, quote, morally unacceptable behavior. Today, the church told Fox 13 News they regard tithing records as sacred and keep them confidential. President Ballard has, quote, never released tithing records to Operation Underground Railroad or any other organization, unquote.
Top story right now on KSL News at noon.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints announcing that President M. Russell Ballard, acting president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, has passed away. The church said after a recent brief hospital stay, he returned to his home where he attended to his duties as able. He passed away at approximately 11:15 last night, November 12th, surrounded by loved ones.
I want to give a big shout out to Adam Herberts of Fox 13 in Utah. He was one of the reporters that I reached out to in my initial story when I talked about Tim Ballard, and we had a little exchange on Twitter. I asked him to keep me informed of any follow-up information because I knew Tim Ballard had a story behind him, and luckily Adam did as well, and he stayed on him like a journalist is supposed to do. And this is the story that's unbreaking in large part by Mr. Herberts at Fox 13. As the lawsuits keep being filed, now there's some women that have come out against Tim Ballard, and they're claiming that they were victims of abuse at the hands of Tim Ballard and OUR.
I'm a former Marine and I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I treated the victims of trafficking for more than a decade, and Tim knew he could manipulate that. I came to OUR because I thought, what if I could intervene before someone ended up broken forever? Before they had to suffer this kind of pain for the rest of their lives. I'd sat in a chair for 10 years and had held people's hands as adults who'd suffered what OUR and Tim fraudulently represented that they were fighting. The entire perspective of Tim Ballard is through a manipulative and sexualized lens. You see narcissism and sociopathy in everything that he does because he has no empathy. The pain that you see here before you is a fraction. It's a fraction of the pain that he's caused. Because there are other people that aren't here that are suffering just as bad and are terrified because of the threats and manipulations he made regarding his association with the AG. This is just another example of the negligent behavior of OUR and how that negligent behavior is actively harming people. Because there were over 60 people without training. Again, no background checks, no vetting. In order to get into the training, we had to watch Operation Toussaint and write a statement about how much it meant to us. Right? We had to prove our ability to be fully in the cause before we could move forward. And that's it. That's all they needed to know from us. And this is dangerous, and it's harmful, and it's devastating. And it's Tim and OUR, because OUR has taken no accountability and has facilitated actively and knowingly everything that Tim did.
Well, those are some of the victims that are coming out speaking against Tim Ballard and some of the lawsuits that are being filed against him and OUR right now. And this is why he was starting to distance himself from the OUR, organization back in the day. I tried to explain that to you guys. It's not because he was showing his face in public and now he blew his undercover identity. It was because everything was starting to get exposed. I was even looking around, because it's public record, at their 5013C information. If you go to look at it, you can see that Tim Ballard was taking a high salary from the organization, and his wife was taking a high salary from the organization. And a lot of people started kind of giving him trouble for that, so he actually took his salary off of there. there, and then he kind of disappeared from the OUR rolls, and that was to put distance between the two people because they knew he was going to start to have trouble, and they had already created a $150 million beast from all of the donations that they were able to swindle from y'all good-hearted folks who just want to help kids from sex traffickers. And another turn and twist of the story was Attorney General Sean Reyes. He was the guy who had Tim Ballard's back, who almost had like a man crush on Tim Ballard. But Tim Ballard is now the golden child, so he wants to ride upon that wave. And now, as time tells, he's under investigation as well for a myriad of things.
He has treated Ballard as if he's above the law. When Tim Ballard was accused of sex abuse against fellow members of his nonprofit, the lawsuit says Sean Reyes' staff was tasked with helping Ballard try to discredit the women. It says Sean Reyes helped Ballard meet high-ranking members of the LDS Church. It says he may be in violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. And it says another member of OUR joined Sean Reyes in bullying and intimidating a woman who says she had proof that OUR was lying about rescuing children from human trafficking. In particular, a girl her nonprofit was helping and had nothing to do with OUR. And for some of these reasons, the suit claims the Elizabeth Smart Foundation refused to partner with OUR. They thought the nonprofit was dishonest, but that's not what Reyes told donors at fundraising events.
I've sat on maybe over a dozen nonprofit boards during my career, and I know that there's a lot of corruption, and there's a lot of fraud, there's a lot of ego in the nonprofit world. I saw none of that, and I really looked hard at Operation Underground Railroad.
That clip is from a fundraiser at Davis High School in 2015 and is now part of evidence. And there's plenty more in this suit. It says Sean Reyes helped write a sequel to the feature film Sound of Freedom, in which he portrays himself as a handsome MMA fighter and a future governor who will cover for Tim Ballard before moving on to the White House. It says he meets with people in downtown Salt Lake City on a leather chair apparently given to him by Kanye West, spending more time propping up his friend Tim Ballard than carrying out the duties of his elected office.
This is where we're at with the Tim Ballard story. It looks like everything's imploding right on top of him. Looks like a large portion of your money will be spent for attorney fees to defend Tim Ballard and OUR in the coming days. Also for settlements out of court, I would imagine. There were a lot of people that rallied behind Tim Ballard because, like I said, who doesn't want to help children and save them from trafficking, okay? But it was also just like the vid, like anybody who said anything against Tim Ballard was basically into it. Like, you should see some of the comments that I got as I talked about Tim Ballard and the reasons why I couldn't support this stuff. And the connections that he had that I found out super easy right up front. And I also saw in the 501(c) documents, which are public, where Glenn Beck and OUR, the Glenn Beck Foundation, were trading millions of dollars back and forth like a shell game. Okay, this is some of the stuff that these folks do, and it's just not cool. So I just wanted to bring that to your guys' attention. But I like the follow-up stories, and maybe as we close out 2023, we'll take a look back at some of the stories that I talked about this year, 2023, that could affect your life. And in this way, I think it's, very important to realize that people are going to take advantage of your good intentions. I mean, that's just the way that it is. It's so sad to say, because there's a lot of people out there doing great work. They're doing great work, and they're not getting any recognition. Seek out the organizations and do the vetting and just look into them really hard. Please do not just relinquish your funds because everybody's doing it. Okay, that was another thing that I saw too, was kind of that group mentality. Everybody was all about it, sharing the video with their friends. And maybe some of you are even on their monthly reoccurring donor list. You might want to think twice about that. There are other organizations that you could funnel your money to help people that are going through some troubled times. But please vet the information, pray on it, and just, spend some time on it. Spend some time on it. All right? So that's what I got for you guys today. Hopefully that was kind of eye-opening. Leave a comment down below if you guys just, you know, got caught up in it, your feelings and everything. You donated the money and then it just kind of fell off your radar, because that's all of the stories, if you haven't noticed, is they really gin you up, get you going. I mean, this guy was with President Trump. That's a problem, okay? He was lifted up. Everywhere you turned, it was Tim Ballard, Tim Ballard, Tim Ballard, and now it's no, you don't see anything about it. And maybe this Fox 13 news coverage will get a little, you know, excitement going about it. If you're on the email list, I'm going to send out an email list with all my links on this stuff. You'll get the full Tim Ballard breakdown that you can go and read for yourself at your leisure, the whole little rabbit trail. Okay, so if you're not on the email list, it's at offgridwithdougandstacy.com. The box pops up. It says the things I can't share with you on YouTube and social media. That's my direct link to you. So when I send you guys an email, it's super secure and it'll come right to you from me. So no matter what happens on social media, I'll be able, and Stacy will be able to contact you guys directly with no middleman. All right? So hopefully you guys share this video. If you have friends that are 100 behind Sound of Freedom, please share this video. Okay? Please share this video. And you have a great day. All right? Thumbs up it too, because knowledge is power.